Paul Guilhaume, cinematographer for Emilia Pérez. I know the initial script you got was completely different from the final product we got. It wasn't a musical yet. So how did that evolve into what we got this year?
Oh, no, the first script I received was it was more two ideas. It was one, so one was not a musical, was one the story of Emilia Perez, but Jacques was talking about a handheld film, maybe a more Asperos vibe, very gritty and realistic. And another project was how he actually wrote the story. He wrote it like an opera, thinking of a stage and with singers and five acts, like in a classic opera piece. So those two projects were evolving together, but in two parallel dimensions. And one day just received a call announcing that it would be only one film. It would be a musical, and yes, yeah, a lot of things were yet to be discovered at this time.
So what was your reaction when he told you that?
Mm, I don't remember my reaction. It was solving a lot of questions of how those two projects were coexisting and what project would be what. Then it was suddenly making sense. I think it was just what he wanted to do from the beginning. And the at this time we thought that we would shoot in Mexico, so we already had been uh, there for location scouting 1 year ago, and we went there for one more year, prepping this new idea of a musical, and then uh, another message arrived after the summer, and the last location scouting was that okay, we are getting it wrong. It shouldn't be a realistic musical. It should be kind of off the ground, not too realistic. It should be shot in a studio in some stage, and there will be tons of blue screens, and the film is going to be this piece that just takes also from the opera in its form, and the use of black background sometime, or of less realistic sets,
Hmm. Yeah,
lighting.
because you guys are really balancing real two distinct looks here, and it on one hand it feels really gritty, and parts of it feels really like dreamlike. It's like fantasy versus reality. What were the challenges of balancing those two looks like that, like, and one like on the ground in Mexico, and then like the other in the studio with blue screen and green screen, which I feel like maybe people don't know you guys did that, use blue screen.
Yeah, the question was how to make only one piece,
Yeah.
and the art direction had to be consistent, of course, and technically the way we shot sequences had to be driven more by the emotion of the sequence more than the technique we used to capture the scene. And we were always focusing, try to forget all of the mess, the technicality around each sequence, and just focus on what we really wanted to tell into each sequence. And so we also shot uh, some pieces in Mexico in almost documentary style. I've been shooting some interior sequences alone with the camera, even doing the focus, myself. So the goal was just to have only one grammar throughout all of these sequences. Although we also had this kind of maybe two types of musical sequences in the film. Some were really filmed like the story itself, almost like a dialogue, and the song Papa, for example, or a very powerful song where Carla sings why she wants to do this transition, and these and those sequences were shot almost like the rest of the film, and some other sequences from musical sequences would just call for something really different, because you just leave reality for a while and then you would just go back
Yeah,
inside.
like a lot of Zoe's sequences.
Two of the majors, Zoe singing and dancing sequences. The sequence that's called El Allegato, where she writes the plea that she will just actually give to her boss in the beginning of the film in a market that's building itself around her. And another big sequence with Zoe, which is called El Mal. She's in the fundraisers gala, and suddenly she expresses what she feels, but you're more like in her head. But she, in this moment, takes control of everything in the film. She takes control of the camera movement. She takes control of the lights, and she's pointing to the people where the lights should just go and reveal in the image.
I do love the way you play with light, because some of the sequences, the light changes, like the London dinner scene when the revelation happens between Carla and Zoe. It's like everything stops and then the spotlight's on
Mhm.
them, and then there's some sequences where it's just a black background, the spotlight's on the main characters. What was it like developing those shots?
So there's something with Jacques. It's almost like he's one of those directors who has a signature shot, and Jacques, it's a black glove shot where the operator puts a black glove around the lens and just you do almost like an iris, but a vibrating iris around a face or something like this. It's something he's done throughout all of his films, and we still did that on that film. But on that film, we also explored kind of the same idea of isolating a character and just a face in the image, but we did it like on stage with the use of practicals and lightings and the use and it was made possible by the studio actually. The In a studio, we would be able to suddenly switch off the sun and the sky and just keep one small light bouncing on the table to light a face of two actresses who are talking together. And we did that several times. And as soon as Jacques understood that we had decided with the gaffer, Thomas Garot, to use only dimmable lights in the whole film. So we didn't use any HMI that you cannot just dim during the take. We'd used tungsten and LEDs, and everything was controlled by a console. So at one point, Jacques realized that he could just say, and on this line, can everything switch off? And it was something we did in the
Yeah,
film.
you
It's
can
really
control the
part of
environment.
the
Yeah.
language of the film. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the CGI elements that you guys added and post that I don't know, maybe some people might be surprised to hear that that was not
Yeah, I think
practical.
there is 450 VFX shots in the film. So most of the time it will be just a blue screen in the background. But there are some full 3D shots. For example, in the final act, all of the when you see the cars riding from afar, it's full 3D. And when we were building this final act, which is more a big action sequence throughout a whole act, we were always, because we had to keep this sense of not too realistic, and we were shooting in France mostly, and for each shot it was okay, how do we do this shot and how do we do this shot? So the final gunfight is happening in the desert, and you have uh, some characters outside and some characters inside of an abandoned restaurant. So that mix of a quarry actually, where we shot the exteriors with a lighting that would just do the moon, and with VFX extensions, because around us were just walls, and some sequences that we shot in the studio for the interiors with some very minimal blue screens, and some 3D, full 3D shots, and some fully documentary shots that we did on a smaller team in Mexico. So it was like, okay, and for each shot, there would be just, okay, the answer for this shot is that.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it looks great. Well, Paul, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. And we'll see you back in a little bit.
Thank you.